Hello, welcome to the Midnight Bible Study. I want to present something to you today which is extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary evidence that the Bible is not only the Word of God, which is obvious, but is designed, the structure of the language is designed in such a way that really defies explanation. It defies explanation because it's so incredible. Now, I want to, at the same time, this is something, it's so complicated that this really didn't even come into awareness until the age of computers were able to do lingual analysis of the text and look for codes that were coded into the text. And so they've come up with, They've found the patterns that suggest that there are secret messages coded into the text. But the text itself, even without any codes, is absolutely extraordinary. And what I mean by that is we're talking about, at the moment, what's in discussion is Isaiah 53. Now, Isaiah is one of the most beautiful chapters of all literature, the language in it. But the real question is, we know who the writer is, that would be Isaiah, but who was the author? Who was the author that dictated this to Isaiah? Now, here's why I bring it up. First of all, there's over 40 names of individuals encoded into this text. But when I tell you who these 40 names are, I think you're going to agree. It's quite astounding. First, let me just read a passage to you, which is in itself, even with no codes whatsoever, the passage in itself is incredibly mysterious because it's in the Old Testament. And you'd have to wonder how it got there. And now it was, well, when you see the description of the suffering servant, I think you'll recognize who it is immediately. Here it comes from Isaiah 53. Who hath believed our report, and to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of dry ground. He hath no form nor comeliness, and when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. I'm going to skip a few lines just to speed this up. He was despised and esteemed not. Surely he had borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. Does that sound familiar to anyone you might know of? The chastisement of our peace was upon him. By the way, do you think this is coincidence? If so, let me know in the discussion if you think this is just coincidence. We have turned every one away, and the Lord hath laid him the iniquity upon all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. Does that sound familiar? He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. How about who was accused in front of Pilate and yet refused to defend himself? He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter. I'll skip a few lines. He was cut off from the land of the living. He had done no violence. By his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many. Many are justified by him, for he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore I will divide it with him a portion. Now this is the fascinating ending here, because so far he's portrayed as the suffering servant who is a lamb for the slaughter, a grieving, a sad figure who suffers greatly. And yet listen how this ends. Therefore I will divide him with a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong. Because he hath poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors, and he bare the sin of many, and made intercession with the transgressors. So there you go. That's Isaiah 52 to 53. And I think you'll agree that that's it's an absolutely flawless description of Jesus, right? I can't think of, other than I don't know how you could describe him any better. It's a perfect description of his life and his contribution and his purpose. It's all there. There's no one else that could describe. But amazingly, the in the Old Testament, it never was apparently recognized. I mean, even after Jesus' appearance, the Jews never seemed to recognize this. So it's extraordinary that he went unrecognized. Now, it is said that that this portion, because of its resemblance to Jesus, was cut out of some of the texts, but in some others it remained. It was cut out of him specifically because they realized that it was a description of Jesus. Now that makes no sense. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you go, oh my goodness, he was the Messiah. Maybe we better rethink things. But no, let's just cling to fantasy. Let's cut it out of there and pretend it didn't happen. Now, by the way, this passage I just read, that was written 700 years before the crucifixion. 700 years. So, is that just coincidence? Let me know. Type yes or no in the text, just to let me know if you think that's coincidence, because it is possible it's coincidence, and some believe it is just coincidence. Now, by the way, this was part of the Septuagint translation, completed in the 3rd century before Christ was born. So now about the codes, about these codes, this is fascinating too, because what we looked at was the text which we can just read. There's another subtext, a coded text, a text beneath the text, which is all the more fascinating because, first of all, how could Isaiah have been able to describe Jesus when we're talking, Jesus hadn't been born for 700 years after this. How could he describe him so amazing, with such perfect clarity? That's why I say Isaiah may have written it, but he wasn't the author. Who was the author? Evidently, he was being, well, anyway, so on the same time, there's a much deeper message coded into the language. Now, I'm not a linguist. I am a writing professor, but I'm not a linguist. But nevertheless, this is fascinating. So the label Nazarene, now the way this works is at certain intervals, letters are coded into the text. So, like every 7th letter, bam, 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 bam. And then, what does that say? If you look at every 7th letter, it says Nazarene. Or Galilee. Galilee occurs twice. So the word Nazarene and Galilee are coded into the text. By the way, my Chuck Missler is the one who is my source here, and he says also isolated events, these encoded labels don't seem that significant. In other words, you might find these elsewhere also, just by chance. But they're appearing in combination, they seem to rise above any ambient noise level. So if it was just one of them and that was it, then probably no big deal. But if you see Nazarene and Galilee in this passage about Jesus together, well, that's suddenly becoming significant. But that's only the beginning. How about if we add in words like Passover, Herod, Caesar, Mount Moriah, Annas, Annas and Caiaphas were the 2 high priests that were involved in trials when they the show trials they put on for Christ. Their names are both there. That led to the crucifixion. The most startling. Okay, now this is interesting. All of the names of the disciples were also coded into the text. Now, if 1 or 2 of them were there, you might just write it off as chance because that might happen just by chance. But all of them, is that just coincidence? Let me know. Just if you think it's not coincidence, then just put an N in the discussion. If you think it's coincidence, just put a Y for yes in the discussion down below. So, but we're not done yet. We're just getting started here. The name of Peter. Now, just again, how this works. The name of Peter, that's of course one of the disciples, beginning with the 2nd letter of the 5th word. And so every 19th Every 19th letter. Bing, bing, bing. Every 19th letter. P-E-T-E-R. So now, it said there's over 300 current, that happens over 300 times in the book of Isaiah. But the fact that it happens here in this particular passage in Isaiah is curious because of the fact that he played a big part in the story, as did John, Andrew, Philip. All of the apostles are labeled here. Both Jameses. Now there are 3 Jameses in the greater story, but evidently there were 2 who actually were at the crucifixion. And guess how many Jameses turn up in this passage? 2. 2 Jameses. Now there were 3 Marys. 3 Marys were at the crucifixion. Guess how many times Mary is encoded into this text? 3. Fascinating. Do you think it's coincidence? If so, just put a Y down in the discussion. Or if not, put an N. Now there is one ominous omission from this list. One ominous omission. So you might say, well, there you go. It wasn't all of them. So it's just coincidence. But here's who the omission is. Judas Iscariot was the one apostle that was the one disciple that wasn't listed. So that's fascinating. So let me now there are actually 40 words that are encoded into this. So that encoded into this brief passage that I just read you. Let me just read them off to you really quickly, because they're all encoded into it. And you see if you think this is all by coincidence, that these are all encoded into the passage. Yeshua is my name, his signature, Messiah, Nazarene, Galilee, Shiloh, Pharisee, Levites, Caiaphas, Annas, Passover, the man Herod, wicked Caesar perish, the evil Roman city, let him be crucified, Moriah, cross, pierce, from the atonement lamb, the disciples mourn, Peter, Matthew, John, Andrew, Philip, Thomas, James, Simon, Thaddeus, Matthias, Mary, Salome, Joseph, bread, wine, Obed, Jesse, seed, water, Jonah. Wow. Incredible. Yeah, they're all encoded into that one brief passage, which is a perfect description of Jesus, penned 700 years before his birth. So there you go. Let me know what you think, because certainly there are skeptics who claim this is just coincidence, nothing to see here. So let me know what you think. Is it just coincidence, or do you think there's something to this? God bless you, and thanks for visiting the Midnight Bible Study. Good night.